The meaning of the word Christian is a follower of Christ. That term follow comes up a lot these days, especially on social media. I wonder, who do you follow? Who are you interested in? Who do you want to hear from? See what they're up to. I don't know if Jesus would use Twitter if he was around on earth today, but the idea of following Jesus can be a really helpful thing to think about. How much do we want to know him? To find out what he's like? To listen to what he said? And how do we do that? How do we follow in that way? We do it when we read the Bible, find out stories of what Jesus did. We can look at church history, all the ways that Jesus continues to build his church. And of course, we hear stories shared of what he's still doing in the lives of his followers. When Jesus was on earth, following him could mean something a little different. He had people who physically followed him around, showing various levels of interest and commitment, possibly following him around because they didn't really like what he said and what he did. But that term Christian, being called a follower of Christ, that only really emerged after Jesus had died, had resurrected, gone to be with God the Father. It wasn't an option anymore to physically follow a man around all day. But they weren't called followers just simply because they were interested in what Jesus had said either. It was because they followed his example. In our Bible reading, Jesus washes feet. And he says, I've set you an example. You should do as I have done for you. A few verses later, he gets right to the heart of what he's saying. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. And he says that by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. One of the most beautiful things about Jesus is that he goes first. He never asks us to do anything that he wouldn't do. He's at his Last Supper with his disciples. He says he knows that he'll soon be glorified. He's their master. They should wash his feet, not the other way round. Peter knows this. He senses this, and that's why he says to Jesus, you'll never wash my feet. I'm not prepared for that to happen. But Jesus answered, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. Now, having your feet washed, it's not really part of our cultural experience. In Jesus' day, it was. To a greater extent, servants would often adopt that role and wash their master's feet. So today we don't do it, but of course as part of Christian worship, as part of Christian tradition, we still sometimes reenact that moment, and that's something that I've experienced. I've had people wash my feet. I don't know whether you have, but I can tell you it's a vulnerable place. In that moment, I became very self-conscious. I became very aware of my aroma. It's intimate. It can feel incredibly awkward, having someone serve you and wash you, getting close and personal with your hidden dirt, and all sorts of strange feelings, pride, feelings around power, the fear of being known. It all comes to the surface. But somehow, in the act of washing, it starts to be okay. Maybe it's more than physical dirt that gets washed away. And following Jesus is an invitation to experience this kind of closeness, to experience the love of God. Sometimes we call it grace or mercy because we become painfully aware that we don't deserve it. But when we come to Jesus with all our dirt, he takes the position of the servant. He accepts us. He cleans us up. And once we're washed, once we're part with Jesus, he asks us to follow his example. So this is an invitation to step into this cycle of life, to be known, to be washed, to be loved by Jesus, and then to follow him, not just at a distance, not just as a fan, but to follow his example and allow Jesus to show us what it means to love one another.
Your grace is enough, more than I need. At your word I will believe. I wait for you, draw near again. Let your spirit make me near, and I will fall at your feet. I will fall at your feet, and I will worship you here. Your presence in me, Jesus, light the way. By the power of your word, my servant and King, rescued the world. This is our God. Your grace. Your grace is enough, more than I need. At your word I will believe. I wait for you, draw near again. Let your spirit make me new, and I will fall at your feet. I will